Hello, Neil. Ah, nice background.
It's the cover of a 1959 copy of the picture book for kids called The Night Before Christmas.
Wow.
It
That
is a
looks
family
very cool.
heirloom. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Uh, so
I
though I was
mean,
just at a presentation of a new outfit that is covering a lot of the C2PA kind of work, but in a content creator perspective.
yeah,
It's actually was launched. It's making great progress. Is using trust over IP. And it struck me that there's a whole series of AI related things that in terms of uh, uh, selective disclosure or data management, sort of tripping off some of the stuff we talked about last week, which would be a
yeah,
layered disclosure. You've got different agents doing different containment questions, and I think there's some legs on that idea,
nice.
including having a, let's call it an AI ZKP service, ZKP in the, not in terms of necessarily the algorithm, but the intent of content. So something that's a specialized agent that uh, can manage and has some very specific rules that can be built in to say, okay, here is how I'm going to disclose information that could
Yeah,
be trained, for somebody specific that could play a role in that. You could actually have, a number of these disclosure agents um, through the system that provides all sorts of different services with whatever technology sitting in the background that it can use. Um, that the intent here is with cross connection, um, credentialed AI agents. So that's really been a hot topic lately. So if you've got,
yeah,
this is, certified agent for doing this kind of disclosure, snap it in, feed your requirements in. Internally, it sandboxes any questions, and takes private information in, applies whatever algorithm is, checks that it meets criteria, and hands it back. Perhaps does sharing with a very limited time scope for information. So a general agent to handle that would be a lot easier than someone having to invent
yeah,
their own specific agent, and could be supported with all kinds of snap-ins that fit underneath. Um, so it just strikes me as an idea. Um, if you're looking at governance and data being, so I'm taking a data centric view, especially, surprise, surprise, because I'm heavily involved in looking at, a very detailed personal profile schema, and already looking at different kinds of disclosures even within that. Case in point is you've got medical records. Here's my medical condition that is deeply personal. You don't want to disclose, I need this service because of that, which is different from, discovering that for a given kind of activity, looking at what kind of and broadcasting, here are the sports I need for me to do that activity, as opposed to disclosing. So you've got that would be what you're disclosing is not the underlying medical condition. It's exposing, here are the services I need.
uh-huh.
Right. So that came up, and another example of that was emergency contacts. So, you may have some very sensitive information like one of my
Yeah,
emergent like one of my emergency contacts has power of attorney for me medically. That's like, you really don't want to disclose that. You want to put something in front of it saying, okay, you need to contact one of my uh, emergency contacts. Well, what kind of emergency are we talking about here? What is the reason for that? And that agent actually making the connection and making the contact on behalf of some agencies. Case in point, a friend of mine was in
yeah,
Italy a couple of years ago. She fell and broke her arm. So now a whole raft of questions were coming out looking for medical information from Canada, and all sorts of other things. So that fits, so I'm, these things are starting to come in with those kinds of questions so that you would have that personal profile information of here's my emergency contacts, but it would be data you don't directly share. You would
Yeah.
provide it specialized emergency contact agent that says, and in your profile for that saying, for the following kinds of emergencies, here's the contact you contact to hand that to the agent such that the agent, a message comes in, okay, this is the kind of problem, boom, have that agent actually make the contact to the emergency contact and make direct connections or whatever is required. So, it gives disclosure, but it's also a highly responsive system that has been given a set of rules as to how to contact. And that was one of the other things the profile is what kind of contacts, for this, contact me by this email. For this, here's my direct phone number, right?
Yeah.
I want to know about this. I want a phone call or I want a text. And you could have 3 or 4 different phones and all sorts of stuff. So
Lots
the
of
contact,
context detail. Yeah.
yeah. So different, different kinds of time of day saying don't contact me regardless between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. So there's a whole bunch of details that are needed to power this thing, but you don't want to disclose that directly to anyone.
Okay, so I think we may have light attendance for this next meetings, so getting close to the holiday. Let me put the agenda on, and I think Nick is this your first meeting?
I actually was the vice chair for Trust over IP many years ago, probably
Okay,
about or early years ago, and so Daryl O'Donnell actually and I worked together recently to write co-author a white paper last year about an AI protocol that I helped design for accelerating and building composable trust. So
okay,
yeah, happy to be here. I'm gonna actually update that white paper because I need it myself because I
I
just
see.
got done with a multi-million-dollar project called ASI Chain that is a block DAG that allows you to do distributed persistence for hypervectors and hypergraphs for multi-agent environments. So now we need a way to register those agents
Uh-huh,
that's
uh-huh.
privacy preserving. And so my protocol is like really top of mind. So I just kind of wanted to pop in here, see if I could add value for what you guys are doing in any way, because I'm actually building this right now or starting to spec it out anyway.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, yeah. So, well, just just quick review. We basically, I will give the antitrust notice here, and also the trust of IP's IPR policy. So one of the things is that to fully contribute to the working group, you will need to be a member. You can have an individual member, which is entirely free, but there's a agreement to be signed. Just that's main part of that. If we follow the working group wiki link. And that's true in working group level. So each working group you have to individually do this. But anyway,
Sure.
just want to give that the notice. And then what do we typically go do? Today and the next week's meetings are special. So we'll be talking about planning and what work we currently doing, what we should be doing, etc. And that's the planned agenda. I don't know, Neil, Nikki, you guys have any suggestions to for the agenda itself?
I did some analysis on that, like the relationship approach versus or in concert with the kind of guardrails and controls. So a little bit of feedback on that, like a
Beautiful.
2 minute sidebar.
Sure, yeah. So maybe Nikki, if it's okay, we'll jump into the so-called planning one. I prepare a little bit of spreadsheet, and we can basically use that to discuss. There's no, very strong structure at the moment, but we're just formulating how do we focus our energy on maybe a few things we think is the most relevant and important to us. And that will be hopefully the focus for next year. So that's it's kind of a free. I didn't thought about any structure or anything, but it will be for free discussion for that.
Welcome,
Um,
everyone.
okay. The Nick, you I don't know you know everybody, but do you want to any continuing your introduction a little bit?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to take up too much time, but yeah, I helped with the Atala project. I was Tony Rose's boss actually. Then that got deployed, like kind of dating myself a little bit. That kind of sucked into trust over IP. We helped deploy that in Africa for about 50,000 students for the Ministry of Education.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a huge deployment, but it did get deployed and it made kind of mainstreamed a little bit Atala, a little bit closer. Got sucked into this, which I thought was great. Daryl and I worked together for about a year plus on that project, and we just saw gaps. And so I essentially wrote like a right now I run my own consulting company, but I'm like chief product officer of ASI, which is part of SingularityNet, which is the largest decentralized AI research organization for AGI. At the moment, right now, we have about 80 researchers. It was a $2 billion market cap for a moment there. Now it's gone down because the market in Web3 is a little weird. But it's so a lot of Web3 experience helped deploy. Cardano helped authored about 30% of the vision for that. That went from 3 cents to $3. We 100x that. But that's enough about me. I'm just here to work with all you wonderful people. I miss being in the Linux community, and Daryl's like, yeah, just jump back on there and see if there's some way you can make yourself
Of
useful. And
course, of
I
course,
was like,
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
awesome. So thank you.
All right, very good. The only news I want to share is the MCP related one. It's really two pieces of news. One is uh, the Linux Foundation forming a new open source foundation called Agentic AI. Oh, no, I'm spelling wrong. I think AAIF. I think that. So Agentic AI Foundation. I think something like that. And of course, the biggest project in that right now is MCP itself. There are a few of them. One I think is also interesting is the Agent MD. It's kind of a similar to uh, mm, the description file for a open source repo, right? You have an empty file talking about what it is. So I think this is a file with certain schemas probably talking about what this agent does. So that's being contributed by OpenAI. And then there is also additional. I think my hope is that this effort would make uh, uh, the whole process of a little bit more transparent, and it will be the similar or familiar kind of structure we know, and hopefully that will help us actually get into work our work item on MCP over TSP as well. So I have good hope for this will turn out to be good. So that's what I have for on the news side. I don't know. You guys have anything you want to mention here?
Just one thing. There's been a lot of interest. There was a presentation today. I can't remember. It was last week or the week before by somebody on MCPI, which is MCP plus identity. It was presented to I put it in the Discord channel.
Oh,
So in
PI like
talking
that plus identity.
MCP-I.
Oh, Dasha. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that one.
Yeah, right. So talking over in the
I think they
diff
use lowercase like
agent.
that.
So basically, that this was given to the hospitality travel special interest group, which is really the business arm, as opposed to the diff working group.
Yeah.
So I contacted these guys directly, and it turns out that diff is actually actively trying to get those guys to come in and do a presentation on that. MC plus I. So
Yeah.
we'll see something in the new year. So I was talking to Andy Kesselman, who's
Uh,
the chair of that working group over at DEF. So I said, well, let's set up a single meeting where everybody can get briefed and all the AI stuff across diff and trust our IP. So
Yeah,
that's in the
yeah.
works.
I think they use much more traditional kind of identity, right?
Well, the demo was using just ID and passwords to demo it, but their
Uh,
actual product has SSI baked in.
oh, I see.
So
Okay.
they're actually using it. So they
Okay.
were coming out to a general framework that says, how can I cache a credential mechanism to use in a series of MCI? And
I see.
so they were saying it was sort of a bridging mechanism, but their actual product, so that the spec
Yeah,
is anything, but their actual product is SSI at the back end. So
I see. The MCP project itself, actually, one of the big work going on, at least second half of this year, is integrating all the authentication, everything into MCP. So if you look at the open source project, there's lots of work going on of uh, how to do that, and th that's also very interesting to follow. Cool. Any other news? It's been this news cycle now is very quick. One week, every week is something completely new. All right, so maybe we'll jump into the discussion on the planning of next year. There's quite a bit of the Discord discussion. I saw commented with Sankashan's questions, and then so I thought we would be good to um, have a clear understanding so that we put our limited energy into a few ones that we could deliver in about a years of time, right? So I prepared a simple spreadsheet. Let me see, I make it a bit bigger, and then uh, where is my full screen thing? Is there such a, oh, here, view, once I share, the screen button disappears, but I will just do that way and make it maybe 150. Would that be good enough?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I have on the list is only the portion that I feel or I know a little bit about, but on what we currently and what could be doing next year. So this year and next year, one is this is a column for maybe roughly a proposal. This is trying to nail that down a little bit in more detail, like what exactly we want to achieve. Either we are performing some task or we produce some deliverables, right? Um, and then how we want everybody to participate, level of interest, just a gauging way of saying, hey, do we have a collectively, where we think most likely we can make some impact and progress next year. Okay, so um, if you're okay with me keep talking, then I would go over at least the part like I have most want to propose with. And so the first one is relatively stable. I've been working on it for uh, on and off probably more than half a year already. So this is really to propose to ourselves, but also to the like MCP or A2A community, running AI agent protocols over TSP or integrating AI agent protocol with the tri-server IP stack, right? Put it that way in very high level. And in that effort, what we have done so far is that we've come up with I think, reasonably good looking solution. We implement it in some kind of a open source demo. Um, and we will actually look at it with two iterations. So the initial implementation, then we look at it, we made some adjustment to make the dependencies more clean. And so I think by now we are ready to write a specification. Um, so that would be the deliverable for Trust of IP for our working group as a new spec, and potentially have another implementation. So today's implementation is in Python, and we are interested in to do it in Rust as well. And if others, have interest, either join one of those projects or another different type of language, etc. That would be fantastic if we could, attract more developers on that. For the specification, we need reviewers, naturally, and people who want to give it a test, give feedbacks, feature requests, and then potentially, you could use them in your other projects. All those are very good kind of contributions we would want to see. Um, and of course, the specification, we can again need a review, need feedbacks. If there's any section you are interested in to contributing, once we start on that, those will all be also very much welcome. And we're looking for volunteers to do that. So that's the first one. There is a additional work that is this is I'm documenting as the item number 3. So once the agents are running on top of a TSP, you would have like a, you know, decentralized identifiers. You have lots of things actually already implemented, right? So a natural next step is using that infrastructure to do additional credential checking or authorization or delegation, etc. And so those protocols then can be layered on top of it. And this again is very much the trust of IPs layer, the 4-layer stack in play. Part of the work uh, we are just getting into second half of this year is two of the interns. These are LFDT interns working on both specing and developing, preliminary examples of doing some of these. So a one intern implement a credential checking protocol. So this will be like MCP protocols. If you're familiar with the term, that runs on the MCP protocol layer, and then it's layered on top of a TSP. So this would then be able to do credential checking among MCP's clients and servers or agents, if you want to call it that way. So they can, basically check each other credentials. And the same mechanism, I think, is readily open for implementation, for authorization, delegation, and schemes like that as well. And this is I would propose a very much, a productive use of our time, along this particular project. 'Cause there are many examples of those, and those each can be applied in different ways. For travel agent, there is a type of authorization that we may want to do, or some kind of verification we may want to do. Um, for information sharing, you may want to get consent or agreement, etc. So anyway, so that's I thought, very fruitful uh, way of doing it. It would overlap in some sense with the diff working group. Um, However, I think there are in more of the two big difference, right? One is not in MCP, the second is not in um, over TSP. So there will probably be um, working on how to achieve the same kind of effect, but it will be on top of a DICOM. That would be another big difference too. Anyway, so that's the first item here. So if I may get some feedback on like I don't know, the idea itself, the proposal itself, your level of interest, and how do we? Yeah, Nikki, go ahead.
Hi, I obviously I can't contribute to that. I'm not an engineer, but I think we have to do it because, first of all, we're sort of 60% of the way there on it. Well, maybe that's a crude estimate. Um, and I think it's a really solid starting point. So I think we should just complete that and make that the priority in the year.
What may
My
I?
second thought is
Yeah,
I think we need I attended the diff group this week for the first time because I wanted to understand what they were up to. And Neil, I know you were in that group also. Um, but I've also noticed there's some debate about DIDCOM versus TSP.
mm,
And I think my summary of the conclusion is they're complementary, and, different tools for different purposes as opposed to being an either or. So I would, they've got an interesting approach. So they're looking at patterns like authorization, um, or issuance, and then they're applying them to a discrete set of use cases just to kind of unpack it.
yeah,
And so I think not to disrupt our work, but I think we should try and align it with Diff's work, because, it's useful to see where TSP works better, um, and where DIDCOM might be, or where the two could work together. I don't, uh, as I say, my level of understanding is logical as opposed to technical. Um, because it would be such a shame with such a big crossover between the groups for, um, well, two people, but we're all part of the same bigger decentralized trust group. So I just think some alignment with their work. I don't know. What do you think, Neil? You were in the discussion on Monday.
I think certainly one of the things that, I mean, they're starting to walk through the use case. So looking at, okay, we want to do this following, we want to do it with agents. What's the distribution look like? What's the communication that's going underneath? They're overlapping, basically saying, okay, we need to think about authorization and authentication. They're also looking at, OAuth and other authentication authorization mechanisms, which reality check is in 2025, 26, that the initial digital wallets are going to be using those technologies. They're not going to be SSI centric right out of the box. So digital wallets will be doing, so trials have been done using those techniques. Certainly, what I know, and I've had conversations with the OpenID Connect folks, up at the advisory board level. And, they're all headed towards SSI. So they're doing DIDCOM or whatever it takes to do communication underneath the hood. So verifiable credentials, checking issuers, doing, the triangle of verification. They're using DIDCOM. But, it's very clear from what they're doing in that case is you could snap in any protocol that's going to do that. So it's you need to, it's let's call it specification or requirements driven, but they're heading towards the same kind of model. At this point, this kind of work is complementary and needs to snap in, but I see a lot of things that are starting to pop out of this discussion saying, okay, there's a role here that nobody's talked about, which was to some extent my initial chat at the top of this meeting in terms of looking at, selective disclosure, using agents and various technologies where the AI agents are wrapping it. There's a role to play in terms of, negotiating and disclosing information, et cetera, as sort of a vehicle, which doesn't matter what information you are communicating, including, exchanging credentials, identities, and everything else. So again, there's some patterns coming out here that agents are going to have to fit in, and how does this all work cross-platform, cross-AI ecosystem? So there's a whole body of things that are emerging, and I would say, be very interested in hearing from Nick on this. Is what are the kinds of patterns that are showing up here that we need to snap this stuff into, and what are the services, and do they resemble things that are same concepts across the different ecosystems? And I think that's everybody seems to be heading in the same direction. Certainly of
I wouldn't,
presentation.
yeah, I wouldn't conclude that everybody's heading the same direction, but I do agree that at least in the higher level topics and trust, so we call trust tests, and the use cases and patterns, they are definitely maybe shared. I don't know whether they'll be identical and maybe complementary for sure. Because
Yeah.
use cases are always going to be complementary, right? Whoever help us understand better and understand the potential pattern better would be definitely complementary work. Yeah.
So so I don't certainly I've sort of I'm attending most of the AI groups across Trust IP and Diff, including the one I'm involved in, which is the travel profile work group, because
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
the content they're all going to be shuffling. Everybody's, generally the problem space is I'm not seeing any huge divergence in terms of where people think things have to go. Everybody says, yeah, there's these areas we need to work through in the next little while of agent to agent. Um, and certainly delegation is a hot topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I as a person is delegating to an agent. How does that work? How does further delegation happen?
Yeah.
So those are all common things.
Yeah.
Is that reasonable, Nikki?
Yeah, the other big difference is we're thinking mostly about single agents, but obviously because of Andor's role, there's more thought about multi-agent strings and clusters. And the delegation thing is also a big hot topic in Project Nanda. So we come back to this kind of mapping and initiatives and focusing in on specific aspects of what the trust over IP stack and how that can help. So, in
Right.
order to manage scope, I think just keep it as it is, but an awareness and some iterations with some of those other groups and
My,
cross-pollination in terms of use cases,
yeah.
patterns, I think that would be really useful.
Because we are going essentially bottom up. We start with um, some basic foundational thinking that's basically in the end, concentrated on the way how we design TSP. And then from there, we are working on enabling this foundation be usable or can be integrated as an option into the MCP community. Um, and we are taking the approach of sort of like, hey, exactly how credentials, use cases, patterns, etc., are not necessarily our strengths, because that require you to be really in deep in the agent-based application development area. And so they would have a much more direct, like maybe Neil, you have more direct knowledge of saying, hey, for travel agent kind of the software or product, um, this sort of pattern really fit, right? And so we are hoping or we're trying to connect with that kind of. So if Diff working on those, that would be awesome because that's totally complementary. We will
Mhm.
understand how those real use cases will look like, and then we will design our solutions to better fit or meet the requirement for that. And so hopefully that will be the scheme, and then it's entirely complementary. And I think if the diff or the credential patterns, etc., are properly specified, then whether it runs on DICOM and TSP may not matter as much, or OpenID. There's a lot of ways you could get this done.
Well, certainly, most of the people in the H&T SIG are non-technical. So, which, I mean, the scary part is I'm the tech lead on the work group, so that's how scary it is. But I mean, the one thing that is certainly coming out of the hospitality and travel discussions is the way that the thinking is going is that AI is going to emulate the current human chain, right? So what is key in hospitality and travel is you've got individual services, which can get down to microservices like a local, walking tour group. Um, there's a lot of fragmentation. They have a real problem in terms of identity and certainty as to who people are and cross-credentialing, saying, can I trust you as a bus tour operator or something else? But there's this very global infrastructure that you got the big aggregators up at the top, like bookings.com and Expedia and the airlines that all competing in some certain ways. And the expectation is AI is going to have to fit into that because that's the way the business model works. Um, and it's already a fragmented chain that would hugely benefit from SSI. That's certainly the business people are saying, yeah, SSI will save our butt because this is a problem we don't know how to get out of with conventional technology. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I'm expecting is that uh, the current interplay within hospitality and travel is going to drive a lot of the patterns that AI agent interaction and delegation. So, because it fits for travel, it fits for just about any other consumer activity.
Okay. So from I think you would think this is a valuable thing that we should get it done next year, right? Is that
Mhm.
Neil? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We were trying to. I think the
Nick
main
Nick has
feedback.
his hand up, Wenjing.
Yes, I saw. Let me just finish this one note. So we would. Um, sorry. I guess the main feedback is we would monitor or attend the diff working groups work and see or seek at least learn from the use cases and patterns and the work they are going on. Okay, good. So I think I captured that note, and then Nick.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like kind of a lot of the primary things. Like I used to defend a 14,000 node military network down in San Diego called Svabor, and we were
Yeah,
one of the first a decade ago. This was 10 years ago to have to deploy a multi-agent environment where we literally had to root our own machines because we were getting infested by botnets like all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So providing like more of a hard case and security for this kind of stuff, I think would be super beneficial because it's going to scale and it's going to deal with a lot of problems. Like for instance, nobody tells you how to deploy all these agents. Like literally, I had to sit back and I joked with my boss that we should write a worm to deploy this agent, and he did it. He did it on our subnet, and it leaked out unfortunately on a dual homed host, but we got it. But it was very successful. In 48 hours, we owned about 60% of our 14,000 node network. We were the network security team, so we knew more of the vulnerabilities of things than others, but we had to own our own assets to then install the agent in memory. And then we had this problem of then understanding like how do we register these agents? And we work with a company called Elemental Security that Dan Farmer started. It's still around today, where you can take your policy and then convert it into a set of programmatic rules that other agents then can enforce, like if you see weird port traffic on things. But for use cases and patterns, overwhelmingly, like hands down, I think that's a great environment to go into because it's very tangible. It's very tractable in terms of creating programmatic rules, right? And it's
Yeah.
not this like ethereal space. Like shopping can get weird. No offense to Neil, right? But he knows what I'm talking about, where it's like it's hard to programmatically case like all these like travel rules. It's doable for certain things, but it's not as discrete as like, is this traffic coming from this port registered to this specific server or switch? And then taking snapshots of that asset so that it has an avatar, which is what I did, to have self-governance rules that can basically be implemented through your network security policy, right? Which most of which, let's be honest, are pretty useless unless they can programmatically be converted into like actual rules. So for what I'm doing now, the big problem with open source decentralized agentic systems is this same problem where I can't go to bed at night thinking, oh my God, I've built this chain now that can do multi-agent persistence, but like who's writing that? Like all of these people who are basically hacking things now are going to be the first people to like use this as a free method of like persistence for orchestrating multi-peer attacks. Because I used to have to defend myself against those same people 10 years ago. Like 90% of my attacks were asymmetric botnet attacks, right? And so the
Mm.
first thing people do, just like is evidence with OpenAI is. So anyway, in short, what I'm trying to say is that security multi-agent environments would be great to like truck drive this stack into it. MCP has tons of holes in it, right? Those are
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that link I just sent you. I mean, I'm sure you guys know, right? Being engineers, but A to A is not any better. There's still a lots of problems with A to A, and it's nascent. It's young.
Yeah.
You'll fix
The,
it,
the the
but
MCP most of the like last couple of months, I think a lot of
yeah,
people 'cause they just started to trying to integrate OAuth and stuff like that into it, and they are going, oh, there's numerous
yeah,
discussion going on how to fit this in, and I've
yeah,
been trying to tell people this is really hard to fit it in because it's not
yeah,
designed for that environment, right? So I'm sure they're
no,
going to push forward too, and that's great, work going on. And I'm hoping that we can deliver a simplified, much more hardened, secure framework. It will be new, and therefore a lot of people will be hesitating in, jumping into right away. But it will be providing a longer term, better alternative. And that's why I'm trying to position this effort too.
yeah, yeah. And the key rotation they're using for DID management, for key management for DIDs is also good. I saw that. I saw Drummond
Yeah,
mention that yesterday, but that's also pretty, that's like better than nothing for sure. But there's
yeah.
like, like there's still a long ways to go. But that's the challenge, right? Is to make things easy to
That's a
use.
challenge. And
Yeah.
all the component, like I trying to summarize, like for a person who's not, day to day into our community, how do I summarize? And I thought a stronger identity, just, a simplified pattern, because once you see entirely asynchronous without this OAuth model into it, then you are freed from that constraint. And a lot of actual implementation is much more natural. That's how developer would think of it, how you prove identity, etc., right? Without have to go through this forced OAuth pattern to do it. Um, and
Yeah.
then,
And
yeah, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead, finish what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure I'm missing something, but then want to top level like what I if I pitch to some developer, what do I pitch to? I think those are the terms they would understand.
Well, the
Um, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Biggest things I see missing are trust registries. You're not talking about trust registries. The biggest problem with like a lot of, this architecture right now. I mean, Daryl, I actually started poking so many holes in this that Daryl's like, you just have to write another white paper. I was like, okay, because I was like, and we both agreed that like obviously the trust registry thing introduces complexity depending on how you implement it. And he's gone off in that direction and he's doing a lot of good work in that
Okay, okay.
realm. But
Yeah.
that is a huge missing part in this is that you have to incorporate some form of trust registry. OAuth is just really has a lot of other problems in terms of babysitting users. And so we're going down this path now where we're just essentially using a block DAG. ASI chain is not a chain really, it's a DAG, it's a block DAG, and we
Uh-huh.
tokenize every single transaction type.
Mm.
And there's a fully robust like language called Rolang that's the real smart contract language, not like fake smart contracts, which what we have now, which is like just basically triggered conditions. But so anyway, what I'm trying to say is that yeah, you should definitely add the trust registry notion. Also, there should be an AI notion built into it from a protocol perspective for self-governance. Because let's be honest, we're really trying to enable people to do some form of self-governance. It's less about identity because you can argue about what constitutes a proof of humanity. Because that's another thing. Is like, how do you delineate between what's human versus what's not so human, right? Does it even matter? Or do you just like create like, you obviously have a chain of attestable trust through some credential, but that doesn't help you delineate between whether it's a human owner versus a machine owner, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
another problem we're running into. So it's like what form of, and again, you could just make an attestation change and we could not go into that because that's like a whole can of worms, but
okay.
that's a very realistic problem to have because I had other people through other agents create credentials on this network in LDAP that weren't my team, and I was like, who made that account? Nobody knew who it was. And again, security is a great way to surface this stuff because these are real problems, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I my thought again is that it is it's related to our strengths. It's very tied to trust of IP. It is also very tangible. We should be able to look like we should be able to achieve most of these goals. Um, and I think it solves a real problem too. So hopefully, um, we can get this done. My thinking is time-wise, like most of the spec can be done definitely, first half, potentially first quarter. I think the spec is just a, uh, some revision of the documentation I already have. And then, we should go through the reviews and so that we all can collectively sort of poking holes on it and see if we can improve upon what we have today. And yeah, otherwise simply pitching to all of you and who can join and help improve it. I do want to comment, Nikki, sort of being technical. I do think that, yeah, there are some technical knowledge required to sort of in some level, but also we are in a way um, enabling some type of application patterns. And so it does come to very high level. And so any feedback in that level, for example, like you're thinking on relationship, right? Because we, in the end, the TSP is managing these trust relationships. And if we have a better way of describing the relationships and covering the important aspects of it, or if you see anything's missing, anything can be improved, that will be extremely helpful. So maybe you can help us be a reviewer at least on the spec, and that would also, I think, in a big level, help us make this much more good quality work.
Thank you for saying that. Well, obviously, I'm part of the group to try and contribute, and it is AI and human trust. And,
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
know it's not, trust is 80% a human thing. And only, unfortunately for you guys,
The
only
two things are
20%
very different. Let me put it
a
that
technical
way.
thing. Yeah.
Right, very different things, and we trying to bridge them somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that came up in that conversation. So, firstly, machine readable governance policy that is asserted alongside data or intentions or, um, in the context of interactions. And I think, it comes together with some other work I'm doing and things like that. And actually, a really old Aries RFC that Daniel Hardman wrote about machine readable governance. So I think, as we've discussed in this group a couple of times, that's an area to explore. Maybe as part of that, remember we were saying, as with all technologies, they can be used for good or ill. And the
Yeah.
solution to that in terms of
So,
what we deem a trustworthy approach is the assertion of,
right.
so the assertion on both sides, the kind of evaluation, like orchestration and brokerage around policy, basically, and then that negotiation piece. So
Yeah.
that enables you to go across jurisdictions. So I'm thinking there are thin layer players that provide, as with cloud services, orchestration and brokerage. And when it comes to policy, and I guess this always applies, especially in cybersecurity and financial services, for example, you have an element of negotiation
Yes.
where policies differ across jurisdictions or
Yes. Yes.
domains or whatever it might be. So I think considering the governance or policy or rules element of it and how that works in a machine readable, machine enforceable, as well as a human readable, human enforce, human in the loop kind of component, will make the will land us up in terms of deliverable with what I hope would be an implementation guide, something really pragmatic that people could pick up and say, right, I want to install an MCP server. I want to put it, make it trustworthy.
Yeah.
What, uh, uh, what do I need to do at both a technical and a governance and trust assurance level?
Yeah, yeah. So I put down in later maybe relate to there's two pieces of work. One is sort of simply understanding like policies, negotiations, what do you mean by agreements, right? All of that. That alone, I thought we were doing it in the trust framework spec. So this the second item we will be doing sort of in high level the understanding of this agreement, either it's between agents or human and agents, etc., right, are really complicated. And there are no common understanding today. And so the first project trying to build some building blocks, a tool that could implement those things. So I'm listing here as a separate work item to actually simply explore what those things are. What negotiation mean? What are the pattern would be most natural to? Again, this may also be what the deep working group is working to. That's fine because no one has the clear answer yet, right? And so but once we have a good candidate, I think this project, the first one, would be able to pick up and they go do experiment and
Yeah,
right.
I
So
think
that's
you're
my
right. I think
thinking.
there's some early thinking that needs to be done on what we mean by getting governance and policy off Word documents and wikis and into
Yeah, yeah.
machine readable patterns.
Yeah, and Nick's earlier comments about the trust registry, and you can see
Exactly. Yeah,
I talk a lot
exactamundo.
less about it because I don't want to be pinpoint down to a particular way of we get that sort of information, um, and and, and it may not work very well, right? And so that particular pattern of sort of how do we get these a abstract level of trust registry is an open question to me, and I
Yeah,
think
I would also, sorry, I know you've got your hand up, Neil, but alongside trust registries,
right,
which speak to the kind of the the identity element and the governance element.
yeah,
Um, I would also add catalogs, data catalogs, because what's feeding the the AI, and there are different sets of standards
yeah,
that don't naturally fit. Um, and I know LLMs are not regarded as data catalogs, but they are fed by data catalogs.
absolutely,
And so
They're
if we're
programmed by
going to
data
really look at the
catalogs.
substructure here, right, it's a challenge to you technical whizzes. Uh, what about data catalogs? Because like in this project that I'm doing on digital twins, looking at the whole EU infrastructure around this, um, that's like the whole stuff around data spaces and sort of, uh, DCAT AP and DCAT and all that kind of thing. And as I say, and context brokers and all sorts of exciting bells and whistles. But the fundamental thing is trustworthy data sources is the primary starting point for trustworthy AI.
Yep. And one of the
Yeah.
things, our dear Carly Heidema, she's been spending the bulk of her time looking exactly at that for academic data. So that is, she's actually got a framework she's been presenting at IAW for a couple of years. So certainly
Mm.
I would pull her in to look at that because that's a very, it's basically hardening the provenance of the data, which I know, Nick, you poked some information in about that. That's pretty critical. Um, so that's a that's a big problem in the she's a prof at University of Guelph in agriculture, but she's right on top of that stuff. So I think we can perhaps even drag her into the conversation in terms of what she's baking into the non-AI provenance. What are the mechanisms of identity and signing stuff? That's certainly also true of what we're looking at for the personal profile. Right. It's not a VC, it's a self-signed document, but it needs the same kind of protections in terms of disclosure and everything else and what goes out there. So that sort of the data thread is big here. And as Nick says, well, what are hackers after? They're after your private data so they can steal you. So it's a big concern.
Okay. All right. So what time are we on?
So I just want to just throw that into the same box there is also data disclosure. So we talked about that at the top of the thing. So how do you bulletproof disclosure?
Okay, let me put it here. How do you?
And as Timothy Ruff, I'm sure anybody who's attended IAW knows, Timothy just said, there's no way any technical unlinkability prevention will keep ahead of the linkability actors who are looking to link you up, whatever you do. And the bottom line on that is, hey, you want personal services, you're going to have to disclose personal information. And the second you do that without policy to stop it, you're going to get linked to somebody else.
My my personal feeling is that policies need to worry less about the data and more about the purpose. Who's going to do what with it?
I
That's
think
what really matters.
that's what
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier about intention, all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So we haven't got time now, but
no,
basically the exploration that I did do goes to line 3 and line 5.
uh-huh.
Um, and I kind of passed the relationship guides to say, right, what's just good practice for relationships with digital systems and what's unique to the agent side of things. And it came down to a spectrum on autonomy, the kind of because there are two guys, one's entangled, relates to IoT and industrial environments, and so multi-agent. And then in the harms paper, which is a trust over IP thing, we we use Raven and French's power bases to do power calculations and power balancing in the network.
Oh, that's
And so, which is so Raven and French sociologists, six bases of power, things like reward power or coercive power, or so a very sociological, social sciences basis. But actually, there are quite a few policy and technical interventions that you can do to change power dynamics. And that's particularly important for kind of, I'd say, temperature on the overall system. And then intent propagation. So um, that they're I just trying to. I think the overall relationship framing is useful, but it's we applied it to AI, but it could apply to any digital system. Um, but if we take relationships as a starting point, those four factors are the things that are different. So I, for my contribution, which is, I think I'd quite like to explore those in the governance thing. So
perfect. Okay, so I just before we forget, we can reorganize this later next in the next meeting. But I just want to capture all this. And Mackie, you have
Y-
some
y-
comment, then we
Yes,
need to end this. Yeah.
yeah, I joined quite late. I had another meeting, so I just catch the last minutes. But I think like really those are solid points. I was just referring to the AI for trust one. So I think understanding the reasoning codes applied by an agent to conduct activities will be very important, especially if you are having a clash between two agents and the system breaks. So who used better supported reasoning when they conduct activities will be crucial. I
Mhm.
think especially if that goes into the court of any court, even if
Yeah.
that's going to be an AI driven court.
Yeah.
So I think those reasoning codes will be very, very important and needs to be backed by proven standards. For example, if you're speaking about a digital twin, like what kind of agents have been used and what kind of standard is it? For example, MT Connect or etc. Like ISO, EEC, whatever field you're trying to apply those agents to.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. So before we drop off, I would suggest we come back next week and finish up the rest of the table. So think about, what's the best way to structure this? Like for example, relationship, should we, open up? Because that alone, right? That's really the core of a lot of the questions. And should we put that together in the same thread as the so-called trust framework? Or separately, and how do we structure this for next year? That would be um, really helpful. So again, any other thoughts and ideas we should work on? Um, I, I've been basically this link should be in the wiki now, and please feel free edit it, and we'll come back next week to close this off. So hopefully we'll come back with a short list relatively, then we can all work on.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks all.
Very exciting. Yes,
hey
thank you so much.
guys, take care. Bye.
Bye bye. Let me see. Is the linkability. All right, let me leave here.